as we've made the transition at Shields from managing people to leading people, I've been fortunate. I'm surrounded by just an incredible staff of key people at Shields that have really freed me up to spend time studying leadership. And I remember walking into my dad's office about 20 years ago, and I said, Dad, I think we should make the change from managers to leaders. He said, what's the difference? I said, well, I've been reading these books, and it seems like we should be managing processes, and we managing things like inventory and our ad boards, but we should be leading people. And he said, well, if you think there's a change, go for it. Think there's a difference, go for it. And it's been a slow process. It's something that just hasn't happened overnight, but I'm absolutely convinced, we had 180 of our top leaders in Fargo about 3 weeks ago for meetings, and I think I'm finally starting to convince them that the future of our company depends on our ability to teach people how to lead people so they trust and respect their leadership. Just a little background on Shields, a little history. Like Dr. Warford said, we started in 1902 in Salem, Minnesota. We grew to a collection of farm stores. We had 14 farm stores when I was in high school growing up. I never knew this, but a person brought in a little pamphlet from Fairmont, North Dakota, and it said, Shields, cake decorating, undertaking, and groceries. I never knew us when we did the undertaking, but I still have that pinned on my bulletin board, I think. And I look back at, we used to sell hay forks for 49 cents and boxes of 22 shells for 19 cents. People say those were the good old days, but I think these are the good old days as far as we're concerned. My father came back from the Marine Corps in 1946, and my grandfather handed him the keys to the store and said, you're going to run the business. I'm going next door and buy the bank and run that because the bank isn't doing very well, and they were both successful. I came back from the service in 1971, took a $500 a month cut in pay and came to work for Dad because such a good salesperson. And I can honestly say for 43 years, I've really never had a job. I've never had something I had to do. I've been fortunate I got to go to work every day and work with great people. And I feel that today. And I almost feel sorry for people that have to get up and go to work, and at 5 to 5 they're thinking, okay, now I'm out of here because I've been fortunate. In 1977, I went to Sioux Falls to open our first store in Sioux Falls, South Dakota. I walked in my father's office. I said, Dad, my Uncle Chuck was sitting there. I said, Ed and Chuck, I'd like to make that store 100% sporting goods. Some of you know my dad. The fist came down on the desk so hard, everything jumped about an inch, and he said, sporting goods are the first thing people can do without. So I went down and made the store 1/3 hardware, 1/3 houseware, and 1/3 sporting goods. And then in 1980, they chose me to come back and run our Morehead store, which was our biggest store at the time, and they made me supervisor of our store in Sioux Falls. And so we had a young store leader candidate coming out, and I said, Tim, we're going to make the Sioux Falls store all sporting goods. He said, can we do that? I said, yeah, we can. And he said, well, what happens when your dad finds out? And I said, change is good. Dad always tells me change is good. So we kind of on our own down Sioux Falls, because I didn't want our ad manager in Fargo doing this. We designed some going out of the hardware business, going out of the houseware business ads, and of course they found out in Fargo, but I thought they said, we'll let them go and we'll see what happens, and it turned out pretty good. We made the store all sporting goods in Sioux Falls in 1980. That was our first all sports store, and the rest of the company couldn't keep up. They were having nice 2%, 3%, 4% increases. We were having 25%, 30% increases, and pretty soon the hardware started flying out of Waterloo, Iowa, and St. Cloud, Minnesota, and Cedar Falls, and everywhere in between. But we didn't build a store from 1980 to 1989 because inflation and interest rates just didn't allow it. The older ones in the group will remember times were tough then. But in 1987, my Uncle Chuck handed me a lease. He said, the board has decided we're going into Grand Forks, North Dakota. And I said, I know, Chuck, I'm on the board. He said, but I want you to take the lease. And I never learned. I never did any leasing. So they came to me, and I went and sat down with them in Grand Forks, North Dakota, and could make it all sporting goods. I remember them handing me the paper, and they said, if you want to be in the mall at that location, sign here. So I signed the lease, gave away hundreds of thousands of dollars because I knew nothing about it. And we opened our first sporting goods store in 1989, 30,000 square feet in Grand Forks. About a year after we opened it, you could tell it was too small. It was really well. So we opened 40,000 square feet in Sioux Falls, South Dakota in 1991. Then 1992, we opened 50,000 square feet in Eau Claire, Wisconsin. It was too small about 6 months after we opened it. Customers just loved us. So we opened 60,000 square feet in Fargo in the old Best LaBelle's building. Business was good. At that time, we were negotiating on a 60,000 square foot footprint in Iowa City, Iowa, University of Iowa, Coralville. And I've always traveled a lot, and I've always studied retail and what's going on. There was a sporting goods retailer named Galleons who was building 2-level stores. And so I took our president, we flew down and looked at the closest Galleons store, and I remember we were walking up, we're standing looking down at the floor below and looking up at the floor above, and I said, we can do this. We can do this. If the board will buy into it, we can do this, and we can do it better than they're doing it because we're more intense. And so, being the old architecture student that I wasn't, I made a cardboard cutout, I made a 2-level store, and I had a little help with that, and I brought it to our next board meeting and said, you know that 55,000 square foot store in Coralville, Iowa? I said, we'd like to make it 2 levels, 100,000 square feet. We'll put hardware, we'll put the hard goods, the guns, hunting and fishing, camping on the upper level. We'll put the shoes and clothing on the lower level. And they bought into it. So we started building that store in 1997. We opened 1998, late 1997, about 6 months and about $5 million in the project. The dean of the business school at the University of Iowa wrote a full-page article. They had pictures of our store going up on how a 100,000 square foot store in Iowa City would not survive. Professor Stone. And I thought, what does he know that I don't know? So I read the article and I thought, he just doesn't understand. So we opened the store, and within 2 years we had a 40% return on investment. So I called Professor Stone. I said, I understand you're dean of the business school. I had this article you wrote in 1997. I'd like to just explain to you why we're doing so well in Iowa City. He says, I'm not interested, I'm retiring. Dean of the business school. So we moved on and we built 120,000 in Appalachia, Wisconsin, and St. Cloud, Minnesota. Then we built 170,000 in Omaha, Nebraska, 180,000 in Des Moines, Iowa. We're slow learners, but they were too small. Then one day I was sitting at my desk and I got a call and it says, Sparks, Nevada on the phone. I looked at it and I thought, okay. I said, Merry Christmas, Steve Shield. It was like December 10th. And so Steve, this is Gino Martini, the mayor of Sparks, Nevada. Have you ever thought about putting a store in Sparks, Nevada? He said, where's Sparks, Nevada? He said, well, it's an affluent suburb of Reno. And we've done our research. We've been to your store in Omaha. We've been to your store in Des Moines. We've studied Nordstrom. We've started Bass Pro. We've started Cabela's. We want a Shield store in Sparks, Reno to bring California and Oregon residents across the border to pay sales tax. And we have a lot of money to bring you here. I said, well, tell me about the money part. Because as a CEO of a company and a chairman, you have these ideas, these things you'd really like to do. Then you talk to your bankers and you scale it way back. And he said, we probably have, depending on the store you're willing to build, we probably have up to $50 million. I said, well, how's that going to work? He says, we have a checkbook. He says, this isn't something you're going to get after the fact. This is something, if you'll sign on with us. I said, why don't you come to Fargo, let's talk. So he came up to Fargo, Mayor Martini came up, Governor Gibbons called me, he said, we'd like to have you consider this. We sat on time, and so lo and behold, everything I'd ever dreamed about putting in a store wasn't big enough for them. And they said, well, we don't want a 200 and 250,000 square foot store. We want a 300,000 square foot store. At that time, the biggest one we'd ever built was 180,000 in Des Moines, Iowa. I said, okay, it's going to be expensive. And they said, yeah, we'll cover a lot of the costs. And I said, well, I've thought about putting an aquarium in the store because kids and people of all ages love aquariums. And we'd love to have people walk in through an aquarium. And they said, why don't we put two in? Why don't we put one in the front of the store, one at the back of the store? We can have a saltwater one, we can have a fresh. I said, this sounds good. And I said, well, we'd like to have some giant sports sculptures. I've always dreamed about these where people walk up to the store and they have giant sports sculptures. A snowboarder, an archer, a biker, a fly fisherman. They said, let's do that. And I kind of double-checked all the references, and it seemed like they had the cash. So we went ahead and built during 2006, 2007, 2008, the most expensive retail store in the United States with the help of Gino Martini in Sparks, Nevada, 300,000 square feet. It opened on September 26, 2008. Does everyone remember what happened in 2008? We had just built the most expensive sports store in the world with about $60 million of our own dollars. We opened. I'm normally within about 5% of my guess as far as sales. I was 30% too high. Sales were in the tank. Nevada was the worst hit of any state in the nation, but we survived. And today it's going really well. And it's really been it was a great learning experience for us on what we could do in retail. Since then we haven't opened any more 300,000 square foot stores, but our new stores are 220,000 square feet in Salt Lake City, in Springfield, Illinois. We just built a new store in Billings, 220,000 square feet. We're under construction in Rochester, Minnesota. And we're building our flagship store in Overland Park, Kansas City, Kansas right now. We're an ESOP. We're owned by our people. And I'll get into why we're owned by our people in just a little bit. But things are going well at Shields. Like I said, I'm surrounded by an incredible cast. Just about everything we do at Shields, we do differently than other people in retail. Number one, we're private. It's our own dollars. We don't have to report to stockholders every quarter. We don't have to lie to Wall Street every quarter. I read some of what these analysts say and what these CEOs say, and I think you should be ashamed of yourselves. But we don't have to worry about that. Every decision we make is for the long-term good of the company and for the long-term good of the career associates. We make those kind of decisions. They're all on board. Our buildings are far and away the most expensive, the most lavish buildings in the country. I'm talking about our new two-level ones that we're building. When customers drive up, they're different. We have one chance to make a first impression in Salt Lake when we open, or in Springfield, Illinois when we open. We'll have one chance to make a first impression in Rochester, Minnesota, or Overland Park, Kansas. When the customer drives up and sees that building, their mindset already changes. We have the largest selective inventory of any retailer of our kind in the world. We stock 222.2 million items, 2,200,000 items that we track in real time. Through 5 seasons, we roll through spring, summer, fall, winter, and holiday. I think we have they say Walmart has the finest inventory system in the world. They haven't seen ours. And I'm serious about that. We built it from the ground up because no one could build the one we wanted. I can look at any one of those 2.2 million items and my inventory system will tell me how many I need based on the last 3 years' history of that item, or a comparable item will tell me how many I need for the next 8 weeks. We track that closely. So we've got the building when the customer drives up, we've got the inventory, we also have the attractions. It took me far too long to learn that customers want more than just merchandise. If we're going to be different, we're going to have sculptures, and we're going to have Ferris wheels, and we're going to have aquariums. We're going to have photo opportunities. We just put mini bowling alleys in a couple of our stores. We found those. It separates from the competition. We do all these things because the more we can separate ourselves from the competition in the eyes and minds of our customer, the more apt they are to come back to Shields. We'll have one chance in Overland Park when we open on June 27th. We'll have one chance on April 11th when we open in Rochester, Minnesota. If we can get them in the store once, our goal is to be so different than any other retailer in town that we have them. Just had a big developer meet with me in Billings when I was out there in September 26th. We opened our new store. And I was going to give him a tour of the store. I didn't know he'd been walking around for an hour already. And I said, I'd like to give you a tour just to show why there's nothing like us from Chicago or Seattle. He said, Steve, I've been walking through your store for an hour. There's nothing like you in Chicago or Seattle. He says, your women's dressing rooms are the finest dressing rooms I've ever seen in the United States. And he's the second biggest developer in the United States. But it separates us from the competition. So we've got the stores, we've got the inventory, we've got the customer experience. We spend a tremendous amount of time training our people. The first thing public companies can do without when times get tougher, inventory and people, inventory and salaries. We have an incredible training facility in southern Minnesota at Lanesboro. We have high ropes courses, we have dormitories, we have, it's called Eagle Bluff. We can do anything there. We have shooting ranges for everything. We have another training facility in Sioux Falls, South Dakota, and about every other week on a Sunday night we fly our people into one of these two facilities. If we're doing a bike training seminar, Trek sends their best people, Specialized sends their best people, Salsa, these other companies send their best people, and for 1 week we train our people on bikes. If they get 95 out of 100 on their test on Friday afternoon, they can talk to you about bikes when you come in the store. If they don't, they got to study and pass till they can. Spend a tremendous amount of time on our people. We train every Tuesday night, every Wednesday night in the stores on product because we want to make sure when you come in, we know what we're talking about. And the combination of all these things, the combination of the stores and the attractions and the inventory and the people are helping us perform at a high level. And I'm absolutely positive that the competition will not do it because of the cost and the complexity. But what really separates us, and what I keep trying to drive home to our people, is that our future depends on leadership. Our future depends on the ability of our 600 leaders at Shields to lead our 6,000 people so they respect and they trust and they work hard because they enjoy our leadership. It's not about me and my leadership. It's about our president and his leadership. It's about our VP of finance and her leadership. It's about the leadership coming from everyone who leads the team at Shields. It's from our 25 store leaders to our 300 plus assistant store leaders to our 200 assistant store leaders in training. And believe me, it's tough to teach. If you were a science major, you probably took organic chemistry or dropped out of organic chemistry, one of the two. But I think leadership is every bit as difficult to learn and to master as organic chemistry because you're dealing with personalities. And I see it time and time again in exit interviews, in problems in our company. It's just difficult, but you just never give up. The big problem, of course, is nobody went to school to be in retail at our company. They started working for us part-time in high school or part-time in college. They liked it, so they stayed. Or they were in transition between school and a job, or between jobs they came to work for Shields and they stayed. So really what we had people leading people without any formal training in leadership whatsoever. And so how do they lead? They lead by the seat of their pants. They lead by what comes naturally. And when you lead like that, it creates nothing but problems. I'm fully convinced after a study of leadership for the last, really intensely for the last 15 years, that most of leadership can be learned if it's taught well, and if the teaching and the training expectations never end. I think I can tell you in 43 years of experience at Shields, if we didn't have the formal leadership training that we have right now, about 5% of our people would be led by pretty good leaders. We don't hire from people from without. Our leaders grew within Shields. Think of 2 people we've hired and put into a leadership position. Everyone else started where I did, sweeping the floor, selling paint, cutting pipe. Not many start like that anymore, but selling bikes, selling guns, and then if they do a good job, they're moved into assistant to store leader position. If they do a good job there, They can get our store leader candidate program, but everyone's hired from within, and they didn't have any leadership training. So maybe 5% of our people would be led by people who led pretty well. Maybe another 20% would end up being led by a pretty good leader. 30% would be led by someone they tolerate because they like the career. 10% would end up with a leader they dislike, but they'd stick it out. And 30 or 35% would leave because they just didn't see a future. They just didn't like working in our company. And we really struggled with that for years. People leaving. And I'd read the exit interviews, which all come to me personally, and I didn't like my leader. They were a boss. They gossiped. I didn't see a future. So we started studying this. And really we changed to the point where let's manage things, but let's lead people. What were the major problems with seat-of-your-pants leadership at Shields? And I think they're probably the same problems you have with seat-of-your-pants leadership anywhere else. Our seat-of-the-pants leaders, managers at that time, didn't trust others, so they still made most of the decisions. They weren't good teachers. Seat-of-the-pants leadership failed to teach, they were bosses. It's my least favorite word. Seat-of-the-pants leaders were not open to input from others. Part of leadership is listening, really sincerely listening to try to think, okay, is this a possibility? But seat-of-the-pants leaders, those that haven't been taught, they know best. Most of our leaders came out of a shop manager's position. They managed guns, or they managed women's sports shoes, or they managed optics. Well, they came from there, and now you put them in charge, they still want to make the decisions. And they weren't open to input from others. Seat-of-the-pants leaders really don't care about the careers of the people they lead. Seat-of-the-pants leaders didn't help their people enjoy their career or their part-time job at Shields. Far too many good people at Shields early on, and I myself included, when I was a manager and not a leader back in the 70s and early 80s, they were not challenged, they failed to see the opportunity, and they left. I'm proud to see we've changed that. I think we have the lowest turnover in retail at present, less than 10%, and that just does not happen in retail, and I'm thoroughly convinced it's because of the way we lead our people. We now teach leadership very seriously. Every team at Shields rates their leader, their team leader, anonymously, and we sit down with each leader and we go through that with them, and there's always room for improve. And the goal is to continue to improve. We now have a goal at Shields for all our people. No matter what position they lead, no matter who the person is they lead, this is their goal. And it's really a 5-part goal. Take good people, lead them by example and immerse them in our culture, helping them become great at what they do while enjoying their career or their part-time job at Shields. We hire good people. We have a pretty thorough interviews, and when we get good people, when we get people come to work at Shields, I think we've got good people. Now our job is this, no matter what the position. And if we can teach our leadership to stay focused on this, and if we can teach them all the different elements of leadership that go into accomplishing this goal, we don't have to worry about the competition in the future. I'm absolutely convinced. Especially because of the autonomy we give our store leaders. We don't tell our stores what to do. We don't manage the Kirkwood store from Fargo. We teach the leadership in the Kirkwood store how to run the Kirkwood store. They order their inventory, they get rid of their own inventory, they don't ship it anywhere else. That's why you get great deals sometimes, because they screw up in what they buy. But it's part of the learning process. It's part of the learning process, and as long as we're learning from those mistakes, we're all set. I'd like to share a few of our philosophies that go into this goal. And these philosophies are part of our culture. And I'm absolutely confident that as more and more of our leadership understands these philosophies, we just get stronger as a company. But first of all, we're in our business for the long run, and every decision we make is for the long-term good of the associates and the long-term good of the company. People trust you and they respect you when you see that you're making decisions that do not benefit you. They benefit them. And boy, it's tough sometimes. I serve on a lot of boards. I serve on a number of businesses, and I see them making some decisions that they're not for the long-term good of the career associate, the long-term good of the person in charge. And I don't think you have as much respect or trust in that person when they're making decisions for themselves and not for you. Our goal at Leaders at Shields is to take people and make them great at what they do, not help them reach their potential, because if their potential isn't high enough, they're going to hold back the team. So our job is to take these good people, make them great at what they do. And when people at every level in the company, whether it's running freight through our freight rooms or greeting you and smiling with you at the registers or helping you buy a new pair of shoes, when they're great at what they do, we do better as a company. Mistakes are okay. Boy, that's tough for a lot of our people. Yeah, that was my fault. Mistakes are okay. But we learn from our mistakes. I keep telling our people, I have made more mistakes that have cost our company more money than all of you combined. We could not open a new store in Grand Forks from 1989 till 2014 because I signed a stupid lease. And that cost us over $2 million. No one in our company has made a $2 million mistake except for me. But we learned from them. We have, most companies call them buyers, we call them line leaders. They're people that buy all the product. We have a store like our Bismarck store here is divided into 95 different shops. You have an optics shop, you have a rifle shop, you have a women's casual footwear shop, you have a women's sports shoe shop. 95 different shops, and we have buyers, we call them line leaders for each of those shops. And one day I walked into our own line leader's office, and it was a hall. You looked down, the cubicles were all off to the side, you couldn't see anybody. But I walked in there to talk to Chris Skalski. Chris started as a DECA student for us in West Fargo High School. Then she became a full-time cashier. Then she became a seller at women's shoes. Then she became a manager of our women's sports shoe shop in our West Acre store, and she was our first full-time buyer line leader. Chris just retired with over $3 million in her Shields ESOP at age 52. But I want to tell you about a mistake she made and how we learned from our mistakes. I walked into the buying office one day, and Chris's desk, because she helped lead all the soft goods side, the shoes and clothing, was right around the corner. I walked in and talked to her, and I walked around the corner, and Chris was just sobbing. Tears were running down her cheeks. Her makeup was running down her cheeks. She tried to pull herself together. Not a pretty picture. But I said, Chris, what's the matter? She said, Jan Hook just called me from the Eau Claire store to tell me what we could do with those shoes we just sent them. We had decided that we would knock off the Merrill Mock. If you've ever seen Merrill Mocks, they were selling, but we thought we paid way too much of them, so we designed a Shields Merrill Mock and a couple of other shoes while they're at it. Well, the shoes came in and they were not very well done, and they weren't selling. We only had about 150,000 pair that Chris and her team had put together. And Jan Hook did not want his in Eau Claire any longer, and Jan was not bashful. He's one of the best board members I've ever had working with us, store leader in Eau Claire, and he told Chris, and I said, Chris, I tell you what, if Jan Hook comes back, you just tell him to call me. So I walked in my office and sat down, and I grabbed my Diet Coke, because that's what I drink sometimes. I'm not drinking water. I walked back into the line leader's office, and I looked down the hall where I couldn't see anybody. I just went, and all the heads came out, because this had never happened before. I said, okay, bring your coffee, bring your water, bring your Mountain Dew, bring your Diet Pepsi, bring something, come on down here. We have a little meeting at this end of the hall. Boy, were they tentative, but I said, come on, we're going to have a little meeting. This never happened before. So they all gathered around, and I said, okay, who is responsible for those ugly shoes? Chris. Chris, bless her heart, her hand went up. I said, what did we learn, Chris? She said, I guess we learned we don't build shoes. I said, exactly. I said, we're going to survive as a company? She says, I sure hope so. I said, Chris, we're going to survive as a company just fine. Anybody else help Chris develop those shoes? Well, no, they could see it was maybe a good thing. So John Carlson, who's still with us, been with us for almost 30 years, John said, I helped. I said, John, what did we learn? He said, we learned we don't build shoes. We sell shoes that other people build. I said, good. Are we going to survive? Yes. There was a gal that I'm not going to mention her name because she's no longer with us, but she never took responsibility for anything. But she'd been part of the team. Said, anybody else help? Her hand went up because she could see it was a good thing. said, what do you learn, Tammy? Whoops. So we're going to survive? Yep. I said, okay, everybody toast Tammy. About half the glasses went up because nobody really got along with Tammy. She's no longer with us, but we learned from our mistakes. We learned from our mistakes, but that's tough. When things go well, we teach our leaders, pass out the praise. When things don't go well, take the responsibility, because usually it's a failing of leadership and the failing to teach what we really need and want. They ended up this poor decision or this lapse of judgment in the store. So mistakes are okay as long as we learn. We also teach part of our philosophy, no matter what the vision, you can't get there if the team isn't strong enough. And it was so difficult. It's the toughest thing I've ever had to learn as a store leader, as a manager, was I put up with a mediocre, a poor person. They were so nice, and they were trying so hard. They just didn't get it. So I'd put up with them. I remember when I was running the Moorhead Shields, 2 years. Finally, this person gave me a notice. I went home to my wife that night. Guess who quit? It's not the way to lead. If that person is not going to be with you down the road, it's best for them to get them on their way so they can find something they can enjoy a career at. It's not a good leader with the best interest of the team in mind if they keep a weak player on the team. Imagine if the Bison, I'm a huge Bison, imagine if the Bison had a left defensive end that could not contain the run, could not attack the quarterback, but he just played. I guarantee the Bison would not be undefeated for 32, 33, 34 games in a row. We expect the same of our leaders at Shields. We'll be fair with somebody, we'll either improve them, get them to the point where they're performing at a great level, or we move on, and boy, that's tough. Our business at Shields is far from perfect, but when we tried to finally spend time training our leadership, it really improved. When people enjoy and trust working for the 600 leaders at Shields, things are good. So what do we teach? What do we expect? Every 2 weeks, I send out a leadership meeting to be held in every store, in every office. I'm going to hold up 2 books right now that we've graduated to, our textbooks on leadership right now, but I make this up, and really what I do is I take the book pages and I underline what I think is important. Then I write a lead-in for the lesson, and then I write quizzes or questions that actually relate to our business, and then we send them out to each store. Of course, electronic things are great this day and age, and then on Tuesday morning in every Shields store, or I guess they're Wednesday morning in a couple of stores, they have their staff meeting from 6:30 to 8:30 or 7 to 9, and they have to spend anywhere from 45 to 60 minutes on that leadership lesson. They know that we expect them to improve. They know at the next leadership meeting in Fargo or Madden's in Brainerd or somewhere, there's going to be a test on your leadership ability. And I'm going to correct them, and I'm going to put personal notes on them and send them back to Hall 80, 180, and then we expect them to do well. And here are just a sample of the lessons that I've sent over the last year. You can't lead the wrong people and get great results. Now, in the hiring process at Shields, I keep stressing to our people, we hire for attitude and character, and we train for skill. We hire for attitude and character because you can't teach attitude, and you can't teach character. But that's the toughest place for a lot of people in our business to understand. We're hiring an archery manager in Overland Park, Kansas, I'm sure, and the person will walk in, he or she, and they will know archery backwards and forwards, and they've got an ego that lets them tell you they know everything about archery. No. Hopefully the leadership team that we moved to Overland Park now will say, nope, next applicant. We'd much rather have the person that walks in that's just eager to be on the Shields team. They've read a little about us. They want to be on the team. They're willing to learn. They're all eyes and ears. We check their reference. Their character is outstanding. We'll teach them the archery business, even if they just shot a little bit. And we will make that person a great partner in our business. But that's tough to teach. So we'll send out a lesson on leadership, on hiring for attitude and character and training for skill. And our expectations are high. To many in leadership, it's about a nice title and about climbing the corporate ladder. At Shields, we stress that leadership is about helping others. And boy, that's tough. You've been wearing a blue shirt at Shields all these years, and all of a sudden you get put on a white shirt, and you get to be a leader. And it's tough not to just dwell on that title for a little bit, but we teach you no. Your job as leader isn't about that. Your job is about making others great at what they do. Your job is about helping them enjoy their career. You've got to understand that. It's about a willing attitude, a willing spirit. I have a quote on my desk that I absolutely love that says, "The greatest asset any company can have is the spirit of its people. And the greatest danger that can menace any company is the absence or breakdown of that spirit." We spend a tremendous amount of time on that, and that's part of our culture. We teach that trust is a bedrock of leadership. Your people must trust you as a leader. We make honest mistakes, but we admit those mistakes and move on. But if we have slips in character, in or outside of work, the trust our people have for us isn't nearly what it should be. And when they don't trust you near as well, they're quite as passionate about working for you. I have another quote on my desk that says, "The only thing that walks back from the tomb with the mourners and refuses to be buried is the character of a man. What a man is survives and it can never be buried." When leaders prepare at Shields well for a meeting, we earn the trust of those in the room. We show or respect their time. When I tell someone I will check on it and I get back to them before I told them I get back to them, I earn their trust and they're more willing to work for me. When I admit I was wrong and I made a mistake, and you say we learned from it, I help earn their trust. When I sincerely listen to a concern they have about business or about their home life, and I ask a few questions about it, I earn their trust. And once I have their trust and respect, I can really help them become a better person at Shields. Trust is the bedrock of leadership. We teach our people how important it is to get to know their people. Get to know their people. What hobbies do they have? What's their spouse's name? What are their kids' names? When's their anniversary? What are their hobbies? What do they like to do outside of work? I remember my old CFO, Jane, bless her heart. We moved the corporate office to Fargo when I took over in 1990, basically. I was the only corporate office employee, and Jane was running our corporate office in Billings. And I called her and gave her the sales pitch over the phone. I'd love to have her move to Fargo. And then I found out she was recently divorced and kind of looking for a change, so I sent her a huge bouquet of red roses, bigger than Eileen's ever got. And the next day she called me and said, "I'm in tears. I haven't had a bouquet of roses on my desk for I don't know how long. When do you want me in Fargo?" So I brought Jane to Fargo, and I got to know her. Jane loved RVing. And we'd talk on Monday morning, "Jane, how was the weekend? Where'd you go this weekend? What'd you do?" And when you get to know your people, you know when there's something wrong. I'm fully convinced that 80% of the problems our people have at work start outside the workplace. And if you don't know your people, you can't step in and help, or you can't lend them the ear. I had a young lady named Kayla who works in our office. She handles all our health care, and I could sense things weren't going really well for Kayla. I couldn't stand the young man she was married to. He didn't treat her very well. But because I knew Kayla and talked to her about her volunteer fire efforts in Mapleton, North Dakota, she knocked on my door one day and says, "Can I talk to you?" I said, "Absolutely, Kayla, come on in." We sat down and talked, and she said, "I'm thinking about getting a divorce. David and I just don't get along." I said, "Well, you know that we've always wondered about David. David was a cruel man. And she had to hide the black and blue mark some days, and I said, you have to make the decision, but we'll support you whatever you would do." Now she's married to the finest young man. Her life has turned around, but I'm thoroughly convinced that because I got to know Kayla, she knocked on my door that day and was willing to sit down and pour it out to me. Because we get to know our people. Many of our leaders are micromanagers. Anybody in the room know best what everybody else should be doing? Like I say, we don't hire our leaders, we bring them up from within. And when they come up from within, they know best what goes on there. Now they're supposed to lead that person. And the toughest thing to do is not make the decisions. Our goal in making a person great at what they do and in helping their career and helping them enjoy their work is making them fully empowered in their work. We'll be hiring these people in Overland Park, Kansas. Now we'll be hiring about 450, about 200 full-timers. And we expect that within 2 years, those full-timers will be able to do their job on their own without supervision. We tell them that. In the orientation process, in the training process, we say, you are going to run the archery department. It's going to be Al's archery department. Not Shields, not Overland Park, it'll be Al's archery department, and you're going to compete against Jeff's archery department, and Brian's archery department, and Steve Ryder's archery department, and all these other Shield stores. It's going to be Al's archery department. Can you handle that? Do you want that burden? And then from then on, the process starts, and through 2 seasons, we'll expect him or her to order that department 100% on their own, clear their own merchandise, do all the sales training, run the inventory, and then we'll pay them on how well the archery shop does. But we want them fully empowered, and it does 2 things when they're fully empowered and can do that in a store. Number 1, we can pay them more because they're worth it. We don't have to monitor them, and when we pay them more, the chances are they're going to stick around. And number 2, it frees us as a leader up to monitor things. I've always thought the best leader in the world is the captain of a ship. I remember going out in the nuclear aircraft carrier Stennis with Captain Baldwin. I said, what do you do? He says, I don't do nothing. I said, well, what do you do? He says, I monitor everything. And as a leader, if you're free to do that rather than putting out fires here or handling problems here, there are always going to be problems. But as a leader, the more people you have that can do their work on their own without your interference, the more for you are to monitor things. Our company has really taken off about the last 12 years because I was free to provide a vision for the company and study other retailers and figure out where the company's going. Because I had great people behind me, just pushing me out the door, saying, we don't need you, get out and figure out what we're going to do next. But we fully empower our people. There was one survey done that told workers to choose between these 5 things as the most important characteristics of a leader. Their knowledge of the business, their fairness, their overall intelligence, their strong ethic and morals, and their leading by example. Number 1, leading by example. They wanted their boss or leader to lead by example. And that's why it's part of our goal up here. Lead people by example and immerse them in our culture. We expect our leaders to lead by example. The way they groom themselves. On time at Shields is 5 minutes early. It's kind of a joke around our company. If you're on time, you're late. If you're 5 minutes early, you're on time. If you're 1 minute late, you're just plain rude, and the door is usually locked, so it's really embarrassing. But it's 5 minutes early. Well prepared for meetings is an example. Long, hard work when needed. We expect that from leadership. It's an example. Making the customer number 1 at all times. Example is, every day when I'm working in my office, my alarm goes off my desk at 9 o'clock. I come in early, usually about 5 o'clock, 4:45, and I work, and then I go home at 11 o'clock and I work out for an hour, hour and a half, or 2 hours spend the day, then I go back to work at 1 o'clock. But every morning at 9 o'clock, the alarm goes off on my desk, and I go down the floor. And every afternoon at 5:30, because the new shift comes on, the part-timer's gone, my alarm goes off my desk, if I haven't already turned it off, and I go down the floor and I walk around, and walking around the store in Fargo yesterday, and I saw these 3 blue shirts, our salespeople, part-timers. They were here after 5 o'clock, and they were standing over talking to each other. So I just kind of backed up, got around the corner so I could just barely see them. I watched a customer walk right past, and they kept talking. So I went to walk over and I said, and they got to get nervous. I looked, I said, what was the staff meeting about? I said, you were just holding a staff meeting, you just didn't pay any attention to that customer. Just what was the staff meeting about? I said, okay. What do we teach you during orientation and training? Who's number 1? Okay? And if I don't do that, if I don't lead by example on the sales floor, how can I expect them? I'll guarantee you they'll watch for me more often. Hopefully they'll watch for the customer. But we work so hard at our business to have the right product at the right time, 2.2 million items, having it when the customer wants without having too many. Then I have 3 part-timers standing there talking when the customer walks by. It should not happen. I did pull out my little card and make a note of all 3 names. And I did send them to the store leader and said, Bill, I said, here's what I noticed last night at about 5:35. And someone has just seen it besides me. So making the customer number one, greeting and thanking customers. I love to go on the floor and it's busy, and I'll see a customer coming down the aisle with a load of stuff, and I'll say, thank you very much, you need a basket? And because I got to lead an example on the sales floor. Honesty goes without saying. We can make mistakes at Shields, but there's one strike for honesty and you're gone. Integrity. Well, I was telling them, what would you do if the EC was all watching and listening? Our EC is our board of directors, the executive committee. What would you do if the EC is standing there watching? Integrity is basically what you do when no one else knows what you're doing or listening to you. So that's basically just a summation of our leadership at Shields, and it's working really well. We have graduated through 4 textbooks now. I'd like to read a quote from this. This is an incredible book. It says, if Aristotle ran General Motors. We're using this now. I'm on the Global Leadership Council for the Office School of Business at Concordia, and we're using this now because it's so good. But I'd just like to read you a quote in here. It says, what is business? Like a family, a neighborhood, and even a city, a business should be thought of as a partnership for living well. Business relationships of any sort should always be thought of as partnerships for living well. A business is not primarily a building or a collection of buildings with all the contained equipment, and it's not mainly a set of organizational structures or processes for providing a product or service. It is a partnership of people creating in many ways a better life for others as well as themselves. I'm confident with this goal in mind for our 600 leads at Shields, we're leading to that. I like to think that Shields is a place for living well. We enjoy, we smile, we really enjoy what they do. And I always tell our people, God, if you can't smile and enjoy what you're doing, find someplace else to work because life is too short to come to work each day. I don't have to say that very often. And this is the book that we're teaching from right now. This is where I'm getting my lessons around 21 irrefutable laws of leadership, and it fits our business so perfect. Every law in here fits our business so perfect, but as it says on page 24, 25. And I put a few words in here, you'll see them when I put them, because the guy didn't even know Shields when he wrote this, but it says, becoming a good Shields leader is a lot like investing successfully in the stock market. If your hope is to make a fortune in a day, you're not going to be successful. There are no successful day traders in leadership development. What matters most is what you do day over day at Shields in the long haul. Although it's true that some people are born with greater natural gifts than others, the ability to lead is really a collection of skills, nearly all of which can be learned and improved upon. But the process doesn't happen overnight. We've got a long way to go at Shields. I just shake my head and I sit back. If this was easy, I keep telling myself we'd have lots more serious competition. But working hard on leadership development. Our goal is very serious, very effective leadership development. And we're committed to study and improve every leader at Shields. We'll anonymously rate our leadership again here right after the first of the year for the last 6 months. And they will know that I will sit down with the top 10 or 12. Those top 10 or 12 will sit down with the top 25. The top 25 will sit down with the top 300. And the next 300 will sit down with the next 200. And we will grade them, and they will see exactly how they've learned or improved over the last 3 or 4 years. And they know those are our expectations. I'm absolutely convinced that despite of the buildings we're building, despite of our 2.2 million items we have in inventory, despite of the attractions, the bowling alley, the Ferris wheels, despite of the training, if we can turn out the best leaders in retail, we don't have to worry about the competition. Thank you very much.